We are less than a week away from the 2023 NHL Draft Lottery, but if you're anything like us, you might be confused as to exactly how it works and exactly how teams might be able to pick in certain spots. Well, luckily in this video, we're going to break that all down for you, and we're going to simplify how the 2023 NHL Draft Lottery works. Jesse, this year, there are some interesting new implementations into the draft lottery. In years past, there were 3 lotteries, one for each of the top 3 picks, and any team in the lottery, up to I think, 15th or 16th at that time, lowest record, could jump up to number 1. But this year's a bit different. This year, there are a few key rule changes. Teams are only permitted to move up a maximum of 10 spots in the lottery, which tries to encourage the fringe playoff teams to make that final push. But also 2 lotteries will be held, for the first overall pick and the second overall pick. And before we get into this, I wanted to ask your opinion, just real quick, on these changes specifically for this year. Do you think it's a good thing that teams can only move up 10 spots? Do you think that helps sort of incentivize those teams that are like, 12th, 13th, 14th in the draft position to maybe make that final push for the playoffs instead of tanking?
Exactly, and I do really like it, but the main reason is that it does help our probability of moving up in this year's draft. But as we'll see as we're looking at a little bit later, we do have the highest probability of falling back a little bit, but it still does help our chances all the same.
Yeah, for sure. It's very interesting, these rule changes, and there's a draw for the first overall pick and then a draw for the second overall pick. So after the first overall pick, that pick is locked in. And then after the second draw, then you basically see who will get the second overall pick. So we'll go into a bit of an example. Just simply 2 draws. After the first overall draw is done, that pick is locked in. After the second overall draw, that pick is locked in. So let's just take a look at the odds. We might as well get into this, right? So Jesse, when you're looking at these odds, we can see here Montreal's highest odds here are 44% chance at picking about 6th overall. When you have some other teams here like Anaheim, Columbus, Chicago making up the only teams that have a 10% plus chance at the first overall pick. But all the same, I don't think these odds are that bad for Montreal. And we'll get into a mock example showing just how Montreal could potentially end up with these picks. But I know you've been saying top 3 pick all year, Jesse. How confident are you going into this draft that Montreal will stay at least in the top 5 and hopefully not drop back to number 6?
Top 5s, I'm saying there's a good chance that even we get that top overall pick. Like, just how amazing would that be? Like, we've seen teams do it in the past. Obviously, we don't have, like, the best odds, but we do have that 17.3% chance of landing with a top 3 pick. So I feel either way, we're just going to get an amazing, amazing player.
And I wanted to ask you this too. I've looked at some history of Montreal's picking when they've been in the top 3. Of course, the Slafkovsky pick last year, yet to see what that'll actually do. But there have been some picks like Galchenyuk, Kotkaniemi under different management in the past. I'm seeing some Habs fans a little bit nervous as we head towards this draft lottery, that if the Habs end up with a very good pick, they might end up going somewhat off the board in typical Habs fashion, at least in the 21st century, picking someone maybe like Reinbacher, who's not ranked that high, but is a good fit at right defenseman. How confident are you in Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton in making the pick for the best player available as opposed to going for someone that fits maybe the team better like previous managements have done?
I really trust Kent Hughes because I feel like he's one of the few general managers that really understands players on that personal level, because it's a much different dynamic of when you're being that player's agent as comparison to being the general manager. It's much more of a friend versus, employee type relationship. So I feel like he has a really good feel for the pulse of the league, for the type of characters that we would like to have in our organization. But it's a great point all the same, Josh, because as we know, the consensus pick, it's almost been kind of like clockwork, the same 1 to 5 we're seeing almost all the time. But I mean, every year we have to be real. Like, every year there's some type of surprise. There's some type of wrench that's thrown into this. So I feel like this year is going to be no different. And I know that you have been mentioning Reinbacher. He's very interesting on right defense, an interesting selection. You have to feel like there's going to be some type of wild card in this year's draft.
For sure, and as we flash up the odds again, I mean, Columbus has been no stranger to going a little bit off the board, and if they land at second, like they are most likely to do, of course, if Anaheim gets the first overall pick, then, well, actually, if you look, Columbus's highest odds are third. I mean, like, it's very interesting how this draft lottery is going to pan out, but you got to think, like you said, some team's going to go off the board and go for a surprise. But before we get into a mock example to show you guys the specifics of how this works, we're going to talk about the Habs' exact odds. And this is what makes me a bit happier, Jesse, because we all just saw that 44% chance of picking 6th overall. But the Habs have a 17.4% chance at picking in the top 3, 24.5% chance of staying put at 5th, and if you look at that, that actually combines for 41.9% chance at picking 1, 2, 3, or 5, and a 44% chance at picking at 6th. So realistically, Jesse, I think this is a lot better than a lot of Habs fans are thinking, because if you look at this again, to me, this just looks like, oh crap, the Habs are very likely to pick 6th. But in reality, it's about a 50-50 shot of keeping the top 5 and maybe even jumping up into the top 3 as it is dropping back 1 spot, no?
And that's a great point, and that's why I'm so happy we're doing this little refresher before the draft, lottery next Monday. It's coming up so soon, so really excited for that. And, that's why I felt like we would kind of land in this place and just, knowing with the new system we are going with this year, I think, there's still that good chance that we're going to get that top 3, which this would just be phenomenal. Like, the great player we're going to get, I just can't wait to see where we're going to fall just to find out soon enough.
And guys, myself and Jesse, we're planning to do a live stream around the draft lottery, hopefully live when it's happening. And if you guys want to tune in, we're planning for that to be May 8th. So just a reminder, mark it on your calendars. We want to watch this along with you guys. We're going to have live reactions to wherever Montreal ends up picking. But without further ado, let's get into exactly how this works. So like I said, the chances of the first overall pick draft lottery happens. They have, a number of ping pong balls associated with each team, and they simply pick whoever it is, a number of ping pong balls, the combination, that's who gets the first overall pick, or jumps up 10 spots if they're not eligible. And that's the big thing I wanted to mention. So in this example here, Jesse, I did a simulation. You can do this on your own, a Tankathon, but this is the fringe case with Montreal picking 3rd. So in this case here, you can see that only 2 teams can move up in the draft. That's how it works this year. And in this case, in my simulation, it was Ottawa and Montreal. Ottawa has the 12th highest odds at getting a number 1 overall, but since they can't, 12th, lowest record, so they can't actually jump up to number 1 because you can only jump up 10 spots. So Ottawa technically wins the lottery for the first overall pick here, but since they can't jump up more than 10 spots, they slot in at number 2. And Anaheim, since that was the lottery for the first overall pick, Ottawa locks in at number 2, and there's no more lottery for the first overall pick, so it defaults back to Anaheim. And then the reason Montreal is 3rd here is because they, in this case, would have won the second draft lottery, or the lottery for the second overall pick. But since, as we mentioned, after the first lottery is done, that pick is locked in. So in this case, Ottawa's pick is locked in at number 2, Anaheim at number 1. Montreal can't get 2nd, so they will be bumped down to 3rd. So that is the fringe case with sort of the most complex outcome. Hopefully it helps you guys understand. Jesse, this to me is very interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Other than Montreal moving up, is there a team that you see here that you think maybe deserves a shot at a higher overall pick? A team that maybe hasn't had the success, or maybe a team that would be maybe a feel-good story? I don't know. I'm looking around here, and there's a lot of interesting teams, or do you really just care for Montreal?
I'm going to be real, Josh, and I'm just going to say that I just care for the Montreal Canadiens. The other cards can kind of fall as they may, for sure. Probably a good chance that the Blue Jackets do get that first overall, but I'm still hoping out. Like, this is Connor Bedard we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Until they say that, there's no chance we're getting that first overall pick, I mean, you have to shoot for the stars here. Yeah,
and it's going to be interesting, too. No matter where Montreal lands, you got to think Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton are discussing trades for draft night. With the amount of prospects, we mentioned in our previous video yesterday that you guys loved, there's so many NHL caliber guys in the Montreal prospect system. So maybe they'll try and package whatever pick they get to move up even higher if these teams will accept it, or maybe they'll just look to trade for a star player that'll fit Montreal's timeline for the future. But regardless, come next Monday, it's going to be extremely exciting, and we hope you guys are right there with us to watch along. But that'll do it for this edition of Habs Digest, breaking down how the NHL Draft Lottery works. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We just passed 5,000 subs. We're really happy. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.